Good evening, everyone. I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to help you fall asleep with these road trip horror stories. So before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video idel. Hope to know where you're from and what time you're watching this. So leave in the comments when you're ready to get comfortable and relax. I offer my South Carolina house on Airbnb when I'm not using it. It's a cozy 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home near the beach. 2 of the bedrooms are available for guests, while I keep the master bedroom locked to store my clothes and personal items. That room is reserved for me, allowing me to avoid the hassle of transporting my belongings each time I visit. I have both a regular lock and a deadbolt on the master bedroom door, ensuring that my things remain secure. They're unless they force the door open or shatter the window, but honestly, I don't store anything particularly valuable inside, mostly just clothes. This was early last spring, and it was still quite cool in Massachusetts, where I spend most of my time. I decided to take a drive down to my house in South Carolina for the week. Since I work remotely, I have the flexibility to do this whenever I wish. Typically, I would have my regular cleaning lady come in to tidy up the house after each guest departs, and her fee is included in the overall price. I had the rental on Airbnb lined up, and since I was heading down right after the current renter checked out, I decided to keep the cleaning fee and handle the cleaning myself. The last renter was a guy named Ramon. In our messages, he mentioned he was staying with his fiancée and asked for recommendations on good restaurants in the area. He seemed trustworthy. I generally prefer renting to couples or smaller groups of women rather than groups of young men, as they tend to be the ones who come and get rowdy, which can lead to potential issues. I began my journey at the crack of dawn, embarking on a grueling 16-hour drive with only brief stops for food and restroom breaks. By the time I arrived at the house, it was nearly 10 p.m. I unlocked the front door, but my exhaustion from the drive left me with little energy to explore or assess the state of the place. Instead, I headed straight to my bedroom, unlocked the door, and collapsed onto the bed, too tired to even brush my teeth. A 16-hour straight drive can be utterly exhausting. I found myself crawling under the covers, drifting off to sleep in mere minutes. You might assume I'd sleep soundly through the night, but I woke up in a dark room, the clock beside my bed reading 11:30 p.m. I had barely been asleep for an hour when something stirred me awake. Out of habit, I grabbed my phone to check for any messages, then turned on the bedside lamp. I scanned the room before getting up and heading to the living room, taking this moment to begin my analysis. The space was eerily still, not a single item shifted. No pillows, no cans of beer, nothing at all. I ventured into the bedrooms, both empty of occupants. Yet one bed's covers appeared to have been disturbed. It struck me that perhaps they were the tiddiest couple to ever grace my home. I have a camera positioned on the front porch, a device I seldom check unless a guest raises concerns, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the app on my phone to access the camera feed. In the history of movement, it recorded a man entering the house through the code lock 3 days prior. Just a man, no woman accompanying him. Odd. I reviewed any other movement updates from that time until my arrival, which was also captured on video, and found nothing. I went over it 5 times, and an unsettling feeling crept in. I opened the Airbnb app to message Ramon, inquiring if he had checked out all right. Despite the late hour, I proceeded to the bedroom where I assumed he had slept, beginning my search. Under the bed and in the closets, I yanked the closet doors open as if tearing off a Band-Aid. Each time, I was met with emptiness. Moving to the second guest bedroom, I noted that both twin beds remained neat and untouched. I pulled open the last closet, hoping to find something, but it too was empty. I sat on one of the beds for a moment, lost in thought about the conversation between Ramon and me. That's when I heard the master bedroom door click shut quietly, as if someone had just slipped in. It wasn't a mere drift. I stepped into the living room and glanced at the master bedroom door. "Ramon, are you still in here?" I called, my voice trembling. There was no answer, but I could see the light still shining through the narrow crack beneath the door. I crouched down to peer through, and I stumbled back in shock when I spotted 2 feet standing just behind the door, only a couple of feet away. Music! I hurried to the knife holder in the kitchen, intending to grab the largest carving knife, but it was already gone. At that moment, My only logical course of action was decided to take action. I had stepped outside to call 911 and waited anxiously until the police arrived. Once inside, there was Ramon, casually positioned in the living room, devoid of any weapon. He spoke with a Portuguese accent, feigning innocence, claiming he merely needed one more night of shelter. His denial of ever touching the knife was hard to believe, especially since it had been returned to its holder. After 30 minutes of discussions, 2 officers outside with Ramon and 2 inside with me, I was taken aback when they let him go and suggested I reach out to Airbnb to resolve the issue. It felt like the authorities fell short in their duty. After everyone departed, I changed the lock code on the door and informed Airbnb about the incident. Although I didn't receive compensation for the extra day he stayed in my home, they did ban him from the app. Still, it doesn't seem like true justice, especially considering he could have harmed me in my own space. At 26, still residing with my parents, I find myself feeling unfulfilled in my job and uncertain about my relationship. To say I've been stressed would be a significant understatement. My relationship with my mom has been rocky lately, and it feels like everyone around me is adding to my frustration. I yearn for a weekend escape, so I search for affordable one-bedroom Airbnbs in the mountains. I stumbled upon a charming little spot in Troutdale, Virginia, just a couple of hours away. The pictures showcased a serene and private retreat that seemed perfect for a much-needed getaway. Enveloped by the woods, the fall season promised a stunning display of foliage. I informed my parents of my weekend plans, and my mother appeared unusually delighted about my departure. My girlfriend, on the other hand, was perplexed, finding it odd and suspicious that I would venture to a secluded cabin in the woods alone for the weekend. When Friday arrived, I filled my backpack with clothes, toiletries, and my laptop, then set off on the road. The journey would take approximately 2.5 hours from start to finish. Troutville was serene and picturesque, an ideal retreat from the suburban life I left behind. I craved a weekend solely for myself. As I navigated a gravel road, my GPS announced my arrival. I noticed a gap in the trees beside the road. The Airbnb owner's instructions guided me to pass through this opening, walk across the grass, and ascend the small hill. Following these directions, I soon spotted the charming little house perched at the top. The moment I exited the car, I breathed in the crisp, rural air, feeling a rush of happiness. I followed the owner's directions to find the key to the front door. I let myself in and explored the space. It featured a cozy living room, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and a loft bedroom accessible by a ladder-like staircase. A circular window above the bed allowed plenty of light to fill the house, which was lovely. Afterward, I ventured out to walk some trails the owner had mentioned, just a 5-minute drive away. On the way back, I spotted 2 guys strolling along the gravel road. I noticed my car caught the attention of a few individuals who abruptly halted to gaze at me as I drove by. I offered a wave and a smile, assuming they were welcoming locals, but to my surprise, they didn't reciprocate. Their stares felt unsettling, as if my mere presence on the road was somehow inappropriate. I chose not to dwell on it and turned into the property entrance, making my way up the hill. Once inside, I settled into the living room, the fireplace crackling softly, creating an inviting atmosphere. With the sun beginning to set, I picked up one of the books I had brought along and started to read. As I read a chapter of my book, a wave of hunger hit me. I stepped outside to my car, ready to drive to the nearest Walmart, when I spotted 2 men darting into the woods down the hill by the entrance of the property, likely reacting to my presence. I couldn't help but wonder if they were the same 2 guys I'd seen earlier on the road. It felt oddly unsettling. In a moment of caution, I grabbed my laptop and backpack to take with me in the car. Before heading into town, I decided to message the owner to inform him of the situation. I responded, assuring them there was no cause for concern, as many teams were in the vicinity. I brushed it off and drove about 20 minutes to the nearest Walmart, given the absence of grocery stores nearby. I gathered a few essentials to tide me over: milk, granola bars, fruit, frozen dinners, bread, and cold cuts. By the time I returned to the Airbnb, The darkness was overwhelming. The gravel roads were devoid of streetlights, and with no nearby houses. The only illumination came from my headlights. It was undeniably eerie as I approached the hill where the small house sat, nearly hidden in the darkness. I clutched my backpack and grocery bag, navigating my way with the beam of my phone's flashlight. Once inside, I quickly locked the door behind me, feeling the unsettling atmosphere outside. I hurriedly ate before settling down with my book by the fire. Before long, the room was plunged into darkness as the lights flickered out, leaving only the flickering glow of the fireplace. I attempted to turn on any electrical device, but the power had vanished. I decided to reach out to the owner once more, and they promptly suggested checking the main breaker in the circuit box outside, near the telephone pole at the back of the house. I chose not to respond. There was no chance I was stepping outside. My earlier unease lingered, and I couldn't fathom why the power would just cut out. Something felt amiss. Then, I heard a creak from the floorboards in the darkest corner of the room by the bathroom door. I glanced over and saw a tall, looming figure in the bathroom doorway, illuminated only by the flickering light of the fireplace. My worst fear had come true. This was really happening. A soft yet unsettling voice urged me to stay calm and surrender everything I possessed. Paralyzed by fear, I could hardly utter a word. I managed to say that all I had was my laptop and some clothes. He demanded I empty my wallet of all my cash, which I did, while he loomed in the doorway, his face still hidden from view. He instructed me to go into the kitchen and remain there. Moments later, I heard the front door close. Peeking into the living room, I saw that my laptop, backpack, and money were all gone. I immediately called 911. In silence, I reported a robbery, and 20 minutes later, an officer arrived. I recounted the details of the two individuals I had noticed strolling down the street earlier that day, assuming they were in cahoots. The officer could only assure me that they would keep an eye out for anyone fitting those descriptions. I reached out to the owner to share my experience, and while he initially appeared sympathetic, he ultimately informed me that I could return home the following day, but refused to refund me for the distressing ordeal, a trip I had hoped would serve as a refreshing escape. A particularly challenging moment in my life only intensified the situation. Fortunately, my laptop was relatively inexpensive, costing around $400. I didn't bring along any pricey clothing, but it remains one of the most frightening experiences I've encountered. There's a lingering suspicion that the Airbnb host might have been involved, as I still can't comprehend how he managed to enter the house. A few years ago, after my friends and I graduated from high school, we marked the occasion in the White Mountains National Forest Preserve, which was just a couple of hours from home, making it quite convenient. On a hike, we all squeezed into my friend Alexis's car, accompanied by my friend Rob, his girlfriend Stephanie, and our friend Kelly. Alexis drove a Hyundai Accent, a rather compact vehicle, so we didn't bring much along. Our destination was an Airbnb in Carroll, New Hampshire, during the peak of summer. The drive was stunning. Upon arrival, the house matched the photos perfectly, though the images failed to capture the dilapidated shed beside it, which looked like it had definitely seen better days. I felt I could have knocked it down myself. Alexis playfully suggested that perhaps an eccentric old man resided in the house, which explained its low price. We all chuckled at the thought and proceeded to unpack our belongings. I must admit, I had a strong attraction to Alexis, and I sensed she felt the same way. She proposed that we share a bed, primarily because the third bedroom had two doors leading outside and offered an ideal view of that old shed, which made her uneasy about sleeping there. Reluctantly, she insisted we avoid that room. We decided to place our things in the living room and transformed the pull-out couch into our makeshift bed. Not much transpired that night. On the first night, a bit later, we gathered in the hot tub situated in the garage-turned-rec room. Alexa was beside me, and we both gazed out toward the woods while Rob and his girlfriend sat across from us. Due to her recent stitches, Rob's girlfriend couldn't fully immerse herself in the water. Stephanie and I, being good friends, shared stories and laughed about our high school days, sipping on our possibly illegally obtained drinks. Meanwhile, Kelly was off changing and not part of our group. Rob playfully kicked my leg from beneath the water and winked, noticing how close Alexa was. It was getting to me, but that wasn't too much of a deal. We tried to plan out our next day and talked about hiking to Mount Washington and the Flume Gorge. After a good soak, I eased into bed with Alexis, and we watched Rick and Morty for a while until the clock struck 2 a.m. We sat outside, stargazing. The view was supposed to be amazing. A bit later, Kelly joined us. What happened next was hard to explain. In front of the house was this huge deck where we were sitting. It was pitch black and no cars were around. We found ourselves in a remote place where true silence enveloped us, far from the sounds of cars and planes. The sky was a vibrant tapestry of purple and blue, adorned with countless stars. Kelly silenced me one evening, just a few feet from the porch, as she detected a crunching sound nearby, suggesting something was nearing the deck. I initially dismissed it as a raccoon or a fox, but when the footsteps grew heavier, I exchanged a glance with Alexis, and a sense of fear began to creep in as I noticed her eyes fixated on the old. In the shed where the footsteps had begun, I hurriedly ushered the girls into the cabin and secured all the doors. I attempted to reassure them that it could still be an animal, especially since creatures could easily have taken over that old shed. Both of them gradually calmed down. Kelly returned to her room, and I settled back down beside Alexis. The next morning, I awoke to the sounds of Rob and his girlfriend preparing breakfast in the kitchen, which was just across from where Alexis and I were. We had an exciting day ahead, filled with hiking. Though most of us had forgotten what lay ahead, what unfolded last night was quite the adventure, especially with Alexis by my side. After our hike, she proposed we check out the old shed next to the house. With daylight on our side, I figured nothing too alarming could occur, right? To be honest, I was hesitant, but I didn't want Alexis to think I was afraid. We pushed open the screen door and stepped into the first room. An old, rickety rocking chair sat there, looking as if it might collapse under my weight. The next door featured a brass doorknob, but it was rusted and dented. I glanced at Alexis before reaching for the handle. She groaned as she opened the door, revealing a room that offered little in terms of comfort. The floor was dirt, the windows caked with grime, and trash littered the ground. Alexis noted the lingering scent of cigarette smoke, suggesting it might have been the designated smoking area of the Airbnb. We shrugged it off and made our way outside to join the others. Rob was starting a fire, and the usual banter filled the air as he teased Alexis and me. I turned off the floodlight to enhance the ambience of our gathering, and laughter and stories flowed freely around the flickering flames. Rob and I were engaged in a lively exchange about our feet and other trivial matters when an unexpected silence fell over us. Suddenly, the same crunching noise from the previous night echoed behind us, just at the tree line, but this time it was quicker and seemed to be approaching. In an instant, a flash of green light illuminated the entire backyard, freezing whatever was racing towards us. My thoughts were abruptly interrupted by Stephanie's screams as she dashed towards the house, her cry piercing the air, a chilling sound that resonated deeply. Initially, we believed it was a siren, and I immediately jumped up, shouting for everyone to come inside. Stephanie must have seen whatever caused that sound because in my haste, I accidentally knocked over Kelly, who hadn't fully grasped the situation yet. I turned to assist her, but Rob was already halfway to the house. I dashed to help Alexis gather our food items. The last thing we wanted was for a bear to linger around. After that, I hurried Alexis to the back door, where Rob was waiting with some sort of bear spray. At this moment, I had my Bowie knife drawn, urging him to enter, but he insisted I should go first, confident in his range. Both of us noticed a dark figure moving along the edges of our firelight, but we didn't linger to discover its nature. After encountering the girls in the living room, we promptly contacted the police. An officer arrived and thoroughly searched the area with his flashlight, but found nothing. He explained that the flash we saw was simply lightning hitting a nearby power line or transformer. As for the mysterious figure, he had no explanation. It was probably a Fisher cat or something similar, but Stephanie claimed she saw a man hunched over, draped in a cloak or blanket. To say the least, We didn't stay the next night. The sheer paranoia of being stalked by someone or something in the woods was more than enough reason. We haven't returned to the mountains since. Who knows what might be lurking in those woods?